Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be present at this presentation. So what my presentation is will basically be to introduce the project by first introducing SADC-GMI. I know it may not be as familiar an institute as some know. So I'll start by doing that introduction, and I will then introduce this project. And then we'll have three presentations afterwards, two of which will be from the biodiversity component, and then the third one will be from the GIS and remote sensing component. We are not having the other component of geohydrology, as well as gender equality and social inclusion, which are also components of this project. So moving into my presentation, I'll start with highlighting the importance of and the dependence of groundwater in the region, which supplies about 70% of the rural populations in our region. And it is very important to support food security, to support health, and to support environmental sustainability. So this project is more on the environmental sustainability aspect. Groundwater is also very important to support the GDP of our region. So agriculture contributes about 9% of the GDP of the SADC region, of which 83% of all the water that is used in the region goes to agriculture, and out of that, 12% is coming from groundwater. However, the dependency of groundwater is compromised by a few issues. One of them is the increasing usage of water due to population growth and other pressures. We also have climate change setting in and causing some challenges. And we also even have pollution, which is a very high impact concern on the dependence on groundwater. Be that as it may, groundwater we have got resources in the region that we are only using about 1.5% of. So this justifies the existence of SADC-GMI to promote the utilization of this abundant resource, of which we have not yet exploited the full potential. We also have groundwater existing in similar or in coinciding spatial areas with surface water. As you can see in the region, we've got 15 transboundary river systems that are highlighted in different colors. And then we also have about 30 transboundary aquifers as indicated by the AF labels in the map, on the map. So within the SADC protocol on shared water courses, it promotes the conjunctive utilization of groundwater and surface water. And this talks to the need to address these resources as a conjunctive resource and not singly as has been historically the case. We also have pressures that we are gradually managing and continuously managing in the region. One of them is the population vulnerability to droughts that are prevalent more and more severe nowadays. We also have groundwater receding. So we did a study that identified these hotspots, and surface water is also gradually dwindling. And as these pressures mount, there is an argument for the cross-border management and interventions that address water resources. So moving closer to home, we have got groundwater-dependent ecosystems that transcend across the national borders. As you can see, the map on the left, it demonstrates that GDEs know no boundaries. And therefore, our endeavor to work on the Khakhea Bray Transboundary Aquifer demonstrates this notion that groundwater-dependent ecosystems know no boundaries. We therefore need our ecologists and our experts to look at this in a more cross-border perspective than in isolated context. So SADC-GMI, what is SADC-GMI? SADC-GMI is an institution that is a subsidiary of SADC that is sitting within a huge matrix of other institutions in the water sector. You can see in green there, SADC-GMI is linked to the Water Resources Technical Committee through the the Hydrogeology Subcommittee, and it is also linked to the Africa Water Committee through AMCAO and the EU and the national ministries and the SADC Secretariat. So this is the where SADC sits, SADC-GMI sits to promote the conjunctive utilization of groundwater. I'll go a little bit more into the theory of change that promotes the use of groundwater within the different institutions. So what is SADC-GMI? It is a not-for-profit company in South Africa, registered under the South African Companies Act. It is also a subsidiary of SADC. So as we work, we also deliver the mandate of the SADC Secretariat through the strategic action plans. We are also a groundwater projects implementation unit for the region. And this project that we are implementing under Khakhea Bray is also a project that we implement as a PIU. This is our business plan, which is running now, with our vision to be a center of excellence in promoting equitable and sustainable groundwater management in the SADC region. And we've got 4 strategic objectives. One is to strengthen our own, as an institution, we only started operations in 2016, so we are still quite young, but we are reaching out and we need to get stronger and build our brand so that we can deliver on our mandate as indicated in strategic objectives 2, 3, and 4, where we are also improving knowledge. And the project that we are implementing now in Khakhea Bray is also about generating knowledge that can be replicated. This is our very first project of its kind in the region, and we believe that we are starting something big that we can roll out to many other transboundary aquifers in the region. We are also leading the building of capacity of the different institutions across the region in various ways. I'll show a bit more of that in a later slide. And we also implement projects that reach out to communities, like small infrastructure projects through sub-grants that we give to institutions in that perspective. So that's our theory of change. I think what is more important here is to see the 3 pillars. One is to improve coordination with the regional and national structures. The second one is to enhance the stewardship of conjunctive water resources. And then the other one is improved knowledge to enable the decision support systems that enable the conjunctive utilization of the resources that we have as we move in this era when climate change continues to put pressures on the existence of water security for people's livelihoods in various areas. So in addressing our mandate, we've got what we call the 4 I's model. This 4 I's model looks at institutions, instruments, information, and infrastructure. So the project we are implementing in Khakhea Bray sits in the information zone, where we believe in generating data, which data can be used to generate information and the information to support decision making. On institutions, we are supporting, of course, the different countries and other institutions, including the river basin organizations, to conjunctively manage the resources that fall under their ambit. And we also produce guidelines and instruments, including frameworks to guide the different players in the management conjunctive utilization of the resources that we have in our region. So our model for working in these transboundary systems, of course, we start with a transboundary diagnostic analysis, but in this context, we have different types of reports, and these actually inform joint strategic action plans that bring together the nations and the institutions that are sharing the water system, and these normally feed into investment decision-making processes, and then we create resilient hubs. So this is a model that we are also going to be using within the Khakhea Bray Transboundary Aquifer, where we believe that by generating data and generating management tools that support investments to create resilient hubs using the secondary information that is generated. So coming closer to home, even closer, the project groundwater dependent ecosystems and biodiversity in the Khakea Bray Transboundary Aquifer is intended to address 4 knowledge gaps in the sustainable management of environmental allocations of groundwater. So we have 4 questions. How do we know where the GDE is in the landscape? How much groundwater is used by the GDEs? What are the threats to GDE? And likely responses of GDEs to over extraction of groundwater. And then the project has got 4 objectives. The first one is to provide the missing link in terms of cause-effect relationship between changes in groundwater quality, groundwater levels, and changes in the biodiversity of the groundwater-dependent ecosystems. The second one is to develop a GDEs biodiversity database and map, highlighting the hotspot areas in the TBA, where the integrity of GDEs plus associated biodiversity is threatened. Thirdly, to develop a decision support system and populate it with data and spatial database generated through the project. And finally, to provide information and GDE knowledge on GDEs in a transboundary context to motivate joint management of transboundary ecosystems. So you see the same model that I mentioned earlier on of how we normally work on transboundary aquifers is where we are ending up. We want to have tools that will assist the management of this transboundary aquifer from the GDE's perspective. So we have 4 teams in the project. The first team is on biodiversity, then we have got GIS and remote sensing, then we have got geohydrology or hydrogeology, and then we have gender equality and social inclusion. So within the biodiversity thematic area, we have got 6 objectives. So one is to collect groundwater and surface water biodiversity data and identify GDEs, assess the ecological conditions at the GDEs, develop groundwater dependent ecosystems atlas, which is linked to biodiversity database, identify hotspots where management interventions should be focused, identify and explain linkages between groundwater and surface water ecosystems, and to perform a desktop delineation of the Khakhea Bray. So the sequence, of course, is not exactly the way I have mentioned. So we in this component, we have a team. Dr. Dalu is the project lead in that context, and he's working with colleagues from the Rhodes University, University of Venda, and of course, SADC-GMI is a party to that. And those are the logos of the institutions. And I see the gentlemen, I'm not sure whether they are playing in water or they are working. The second component, GIS and remote sensing, also has 6 objectives to determine spatial temporal changes of GDEs for that period indicated, to investigate the precipitation and climatic variability influences on GDEs, to evaluate map chlorophyll concentration GDEs in those periods, to use spatial explicit satellite techniques to map dominant vegetation communities, to assess the use of GIS and remote sensing techniques in measuring species diversity in GDEs, and to review essential biodiversity variables commonly used in mapping dominant vegetation communities. And this team on the project is led by Farai, who is showing there, and we have Kudai also in the picture, and we have the team from the University of Mpumalanga. So Dr. Dalu is also part of that, University of Western Cape, and we also have SADC-GMI is obviously also involved, and those are the logos of the institutions involved. And then we have from the geohydrology perspective, the objectives are to determine the nature and mechanisms of interaction between GDEs and the surrounding groundwater resources, to determine the quantity and quality characteristics of groundwater inflows into the GDEs, and to determine the recharge characteristics of the groundwater sustaining the GDEs. So they will do a few activities there, which include installing piezometers to check some of these characteristics. So this team is predominantly led by Professor Modre Gomo from the University of the Free State Institute for Groundwater Studies, and there are students there, and SADC-GMI is obviously an actor, and those are the logos of the institutions involved. And finally, we also have the gender equality and social inclusion. As you know, GDEs and the wetlands and ponds that we are studying are very important water sources for communities. So we have a gender equality and social inclusion expert involved, with the key objectives being to mainstream during the process of implementing this project, the GESI principles, as well as to accommodate GESI in the subsequent management of the GDEs moving forward. So the team is led by Ms. Batanai Gwangwawa. She's an independent consultant, and all the key experts in the other themes are also participating, including SADC-GMI, and those are the logos of the institutions that are involved. So finally, just some picture of the colleagues enjoying themselves in the field in Khakhea Bray. And with these few remarks, I come to the end of my presentation, and I'm excited to hear the more detailed science into the project according to the components that I just presented. Maybe I can pause there, Helen. I believe we can move ahead to the next presentation and get questions at the end. Thank you.